we have to look at the collapse of FTX.
The setting is Nassau, Bahamas. The timeline, November 2022. For years, FTX had marketed itself so carefully. It was the sleek, modern crypto exchange.
Credentialed, they sponsored stadiums, they had celebrity endorsement.
And huge venture capital firms backing them. So customers, users, even big institutions, they deposited billions of dollars, trusting the most basic financial promise there is.
That my money will be there when I ask for it.
That it's held in custody and it's there when you want it back.
And then the withdrawal surged.
The run was triggered by rumors, which pretty quickly turned into panic over their liquidity. And the core betrayal, as prosecutors later alleged, was that confidence just evaporated faster than the capital did.
Why?
Because customer funds were not, in fact, protected property. They were allegedly misused, routed, and frankly relied upon to cover these deep, deep losses at their affiliated trading firm, Alameda Research.
This is the crucial detail. This is what shifts the whole conversation from a liquidity crisis, which sounds like a temporary problem,
Right, a technical issue.
to a trust collapse.
Yeah.
The government's case, which is summarized all over our source material, involved misappropriating billions from customer accounts. And it led to Sam Bankman-Fried's 25-year sentence for what was described as an $8 billion fraud.
And to a non-financial listener, the legal language used by regulators, you hear phrases like commingling of customer funds or using customer money to extend credit to an affiliate.
It sounds so technical.
Super technical, like it's just compliance jargon that only auditors need to worry about. But these are profoundly moral and operational failures. We really need to pause and define what commingling actually means in this context.
Okay, let's do that. Let's unpack the technicality. How does commingling, which again sounds like it's putting money in the wrong bucket, how does that translate to an $8 billion collapse?
It's a great question because the jargon hides the moral failure. In short, it's a complete failure to build what we're calling a strategic wall.
A strategic wall.
Yeah. So when you deposit money at a traditional regulated bank, that bank instantly takes ownership of your money. The bank is your debtor.
Right.
But when you deposit money at an exchange or a custodian, which is what FTX was supposed to be, the firm is the custodian. They are holding your money in trust for you. The difference is ownership. Commingling happens when the custodian treats your money, your protected property, as if it were the firm's working capital, like revenue or debt.
They mix the firm's checking account with the client's safe deposit box.
That is the perfect analogy. And when you mix those two, you remove the wall. It lets management access those customer funds to, say, pay vendors or make payroll or...
In this case, plug multi-billion-dollar holes at a sister company.
Exactly, at Alameda. And that defines the hinge moment. That moment wasn't the bankruptcy filing in November 2022. It was much, much earlier.
When was it?
It was the point when leadership started treating customer deposits as available fuel instead of protected property. And when you're building a business, that temptation is so seductive.
I can imagine.
It shows up in these daily, seemingly small disguises. Oh, we'll just borrow from this account for a week to make payroll. We'll put it back before the quarter closes.
Or it's all in the same ecosystem anyway, so what's the real difference?
Right. And the argument is always that they had good intentions. They were just trying to save the business or maximize liquidity.
But in the long run, as FTX just proves so brutally, it creates a structure that's built on quicksand. Because as soon as stress hits and everyone asks for their money back at the same time,
there is no strategic wall. There's nothing there to protect the assets. And the stampede begins.
The cleanest rule here, then, seems to be that other people's money has to be institutionally untouchable, especially when you're stressed or facing a crisis.
It has to be. Let's define the concept really clearly. Custody versus ownership. If customers, clients, users, if they place money in your hands, deposits, prepayments, credits, balances, you are holding trust.
And the moment you treat that trust as your working capital, you've crossed the line.
Yeah.
You've gone from, say, necessary entrepreneurship
into financial exploitation. And this is why that strategic wall is so critical. Respect means creating operational systems that actively prevent accidental or intentional theft.
And disrespect.
Disrespect means running systems where your business's survival depends entirely on your customers not asking for their money back all at once.
That's a terrifying business model.
It is. The durable businesses, the ones that survive market corrections and intense regulatory scrutiny, they're the ones that can confidently say, we are profitable because of our operations, and we never, ever needed your money to cover our mistakes.
And that isn't just moral posturing.
Not at all.
Hmm.
It is the fundamental strategy for achieving the lowest cost of capital. Once that trust breaks, your whole cost structure changes forever, because then you can only get money from people who don't know your reputation.
So if we're advising someone, a listener who is building a business, how do you build this strategic wall? What are the actual tools and tactics that make sure customer funds stay untouchable? It can't just rely on the CEO's good character.
No, it has to be institutionalized. The operational rigor starts with segregation, separate accounts, always. Customer or client funds must be legally and operationally segregated from the company's operating accounts. And you never use those funds, not even for an hour to pay payroll or vendors or to service corporate debt.
So that requires specific legal agreements with your bank.
Yes, ensuring the corporate entity has only limited rights to even access those segregated accounts.
That sounds simple, but I imagine the moment a business gets cash-strapped, that temptation to just dip into the client funds bucket must be immense. So how do you catch that creeping temptation before it becomes a catastrophe?
By using rigor that enforces reality, you have to reconcile daily, not monthly.
Daily.
Do daily or even near real-time reconciliation between what customers are legally owed, their balance on your books, and what is actually held in those segregated accounts.
And any mismatch is a red alert.
You treat any mismatch, even a tiny one, as a systemic failure that requires an immediate, all-hands-on-deck investigation. It forces management to confront the reality of their obligations every single day.
Okay, and for businesses that handle a lot of fund movement, controlling who can authorize that movement seems essential to prevent, insider fraud.
Absolutely. This is where governance comes in. You implement dual control on transfers. No single person should ever be able to move customer funds by themselves.
Two keys to turn.
Two keys to turn. You need two-person approvals, logged and auditable, creating a paper trail, and crucially, a human friction point against misuse. A lone employee facing temptation can't act unilaterally.
And maybe the most difficult tactic, but the most telling one, the stress test.
You have to stress test your core promise constantly. Ask the hardest question possible and ask it weekly. If 20% of our customers demanded their money back tomorrow, could we honor that without borrowing, without selling corporate assets, without initiating a panic?
And if the answer is no,
If the answer is no, then your business model is not sustainable. You're living entirely on borrowed trust.
that is the ultimate strategic wall. So to close this section, if you touch what isn't yours, you're not building wealth. You're borrowing a collapse.
Well said.
That covers the foundational rule. Don't steal. But as we established, respect goes way further than just legality.
Yeah.
Let's move to section 2, which covers what we call the trust multiplier, making money reversible. And this is all about the Zappos model.
This takes us from the financial collapse of 2022 to Henderson, Nevada in the late 2000s. The global recession was biting, and every consultant, every CFO was looking for costs to cut aggressively.
Right.
And Zappos CEO, Tony Tsai, was running a company that had strategically chosen to defend this very strange, very expensive hill.
Which was?
Free shipping both ways, a 365-day return policy, 247 U.S.-based call centers, and this habit of surprising customers with overnight shipping upgrades for free.
On paper, especially during a recession, that just looks like financial masochism.
Yeah.
You're voluntarily increasing costs where all your competitors are adding fees.
It does. And a case study we looked at noted just how costly this was. In 2008, the company's famously generous return policy resulted in a staggering 37% of purchases being returned.
37%.
37%. That was about $379 million worth of goods. I mean, think about that. Nearly 4 out of every 10 items they sold came back.
A rational short-term manager looks at that 37% number, and their first move is to tighten the policy.
Immediately. Add restocking fees. Shorten the window to 30 days. That is the default habit. But Shea saw that high volume of returns not as a cost center to be minimized,
That is what?
as part of the core value proposition.
How does accepting a 37% return rate become a core value proposition? I mean, doesn't that massive expense put the company constantly on the brink?
It does, which in turn forces Zappos to be ruthlessly efficient in logistics and purchasing. But the underlying philosophy is all about risk reduction. Shea's logic was brilliant in its simplicity.
Go on.
The biggest hesitation people have about buying clothes or shoes online is the fear of regret, the fear that it won't fit and you'll be stuck with it, or stuck with the shipping costs, or the hassle of a complex return. Free shipping both ways allows you to order multiple sizes, multiple colors, try them on in the comfort of your home, and send back whatever doesn't fit with zero penalty.
So they aren't just selling shoes, they're selling confidence.
Exactly. Hichet explicitly framed Zappos' strategy as taking money that would have gone to traditional advertising and investing it directly into the customer experience using those generous policies.
That's fascinating.
And it relies entirely on trust, compounding through positive word of mouth, creating this powerful self-sustaining loop.
So that's the core bet. If we protect the customer's money and drastically reduce their buying risk, they'll pay us back with compound trust and repeat business.
And the hinge moment here was choosing not to optimize away that generous return policy when this spreadsheet was screaming for it during the 2008 downturn.
They held the line.
They held the line, believing that their engine needed to be this system that constantly reassured customers. Your dollars are safe here, even when you change your mind. Even if you keep the shoes for 364 days.
So the key principle for durable wealth here is that respect is not just not stealing. It's institutionally not trapping. Zappos treats customer spending as a fully reversible decision.
Right. It removes that psychological barrier of regret, the fear of sunk costs.
That is the psychological contract. Most businesses are designed to make it trivially easy to buy.
And tortuously difficult to undo the purchase. They rely on friction to generate passive revenue, hidden restocking fees, complex return authorization processes, delays in issuing credit. This is the cost of extraction.
So if your business's success relies on customers losing money through confusion or friction, or just giving up on claiming a refund,
your business is operating as a tax on the market, not as a value creator.
and that tax might work for a quarter, but it just erodes the willingness of the customer to come back long term.
Which means the business has to adopt what we'd call a refund-first discipline.
What does that mean in practice?
It means designing your entire operation to efficiently handle returns and treating those refunds not as a cost of goods sold, but as reputation insurance.
You accept that short-term profit might shrink for the sake of long-term trust.
Exactly. The key insight is knowing that people will risk their money with you again and again when they believe you won't punish them for reconsidering a purchase.
Okay, let's review the tools. How do you make that undo path as clear and painless as the do path?
First, you make getting money back a feature. This is a marketing decision. The refund or return promise should be promoted right alongside the buy button. Clear, unambiguous terms.
Not buried in a 12-page legal document.
If it's buried, you're signaling that you hope the customer doesn't read it. Transparent policies signal confidence.
And second, how do you eliminate that anxiety that comes with waiting for a refund?
You time box your own response, not theirs. Customers feel so helpless when they've shipped an item back and they're just waiting for their money.
Right.
So you set strict internal service level agreements, SLAs, for refund processing, for example. Refund processed and confirmation sent within 24 hours of receipt, or credit issued to your card within 48 hours, guaranteed.
That would dramatically reduce customer anxiety.
It does, and it reinforces the feeling that the company is reliable, not adversarial.
I think tracking refund friction as a core KPI is a really fascinating managerial technique.
It's absolutely critical for operationalizing respect. You have to measure the steps, the clicks, the time to refund, the support contacts required per refund, and then you aggressively work to reduce those numbers.
Just like you would reduce costs or delivery time.
Exactly. You delete friction points, no required support calls for a simple return, no unnecessary form fields, no manager approval loops for small dollar amounts.
And there's a final powerful tactic that focuses on the human element.
The post-refund communication must protect the customer's dignity. Instead of a cold, automated message, use something simple and respectful that focuses on the future relationship.
Like what?
Thanks for giving us a try. We're sorry it didn't work out this time, and you're welcome back anytime. That turns a successful return into a potential win for future loyalty.
That is true. Trust multiplication. If you want their loyalty tomorrow, protect their money today. Okay,
Yeah.
That brings us out of retail and into high finance. Section 3. The arithmetic of respect. This is about lowering the toll, and it's inspired by the story of Bogle and Vanguard.
We travel now to the financial world, August 31st, 1976, New York. John C. Bogle, who was recently fired from a major firm, launches the Vanguard Group, and its structure was radical.
How so?
It was a mutual structure where the company was owned by the funds, which in turn were owned by the shareholders. That constraint legally forced him to focus on minimizing cost.
Because the shareholders were essentially the owners.
They were the owners, and his big bet, the first index fund, which would just ape The S&P 500 was revolutionary but totally unglamorous.
He was basically telling the entire highly compensated financial industry, you can't reliably outsmart the market after costs, so stop paying enormous commissions to people who try.
And the initial reaction wasn't just muted, it was a disaster. Bogle needed $150 million to buy all 500 stocks cleanly. The offering raised only $11.3 million. A staggering 93% miss. The underwriters were mortified. They wanted to cancel the fund, return the money, and just bury the embarrassment.
But Bogle refused. And that refusal, that stand, that's the hinge moment.
It is. He declared that what mattered wasn't the dollar total, but the birth of the instrument itself. He said, "Don't you realize that we now have the world's first index fund?"
And that refusal, which must have sounded almost reckless in 1976.
It became a vow. It defined the company's identity as the protector of the investor.
The fund was instantly nicknamed Bogle's Folly.
It was. The industry ridiculed passive investing as surrender, a confession that you weren't smart enough to win. Real professionals, they traded, they charged high management fees, they promised active returns.
But Bogle's quiet twist was profound.
He wasn't selling mediocrity, he was selling respect. He was refusing to treat customer money as a feeding ground for brokers and managers.
And the principle he lived by is based on this simple, harsh arithmetic that is so often hidden in layers of jargon.
The investor's result is mathematically the market's return minus the costs you extract. That's it. His whole argument was based on showing how fees, expenses, sales loads, transaction costs, even tiny percentages, compound against the owner over decades, destroying massive amounts of potential wealth.
Let's put some numbers on that because it's so important.
Okay. Imagine two identical investment pots over 30 years, both earning the market average of, say, 7%. Investor A pays 2% in annual fees. Investor B pays 0.5% in fees, which is more like Vanguard's approach.
Right.
After 30 years, that 1.5% difference in leakage means Investor A ends up with roughly 25–30% less money than Investor B. The difference between a 1% fee and a 0.1% fee sounds insignificant today, but it's a difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars in durable wealth over a lifetime.
The compounding of costs is just as destructive as the compounding of returns is beneficial.
Exactly. So when you handle other people's money, your first job isn't to look brilliant. Your first job is to institutionally reduce leakage.
To treat every avoidable dollar you take as a moral and strategic failure, because it compounds against the owner.
It flips the default habit on its head.
And the default habit in financial services for decades was, how do we get paid more? Through complex fee structures, high commissions?
Or just complexity that requires an expensive expit to decode. The respectful habit is, how do we ensure they keep more? This means structurally mandated lower fees, transparent terms, and removing friction.
And Bogle's refusal to cancel the fund became the company's identity.
The long-term win was reputation. The implicit vow was, we will not build our success by skimming yours. And that trust asset is now worth trillions.
So let's look at the operational tools for what we're calling the toll audit. This applies to any business that charges a recurring fee or takes a percentage.
You start by listing every single extraction point where you touch a client's dollar. Fees, markups, penalties, subscriptions, transaction costs, convenience fees, all of it. Then you circle the ones that don't clearly, visibly, and materially create value for the client. If you can't easily explain the value exchange in one simple sentence, it's leakage, and you should consider eliminating it.
And the metrics need to reflect the client's reality, not the company's gross revenue goals.
Absolutely. Adopt the net first metric. Stop tracking gross revenue or gross returns. Start tracking results the way the client experiences them. Net return, net savings, net profit.
And tie compensation to that.
You tie bonuses and compensation to net results after all fees are accounted for. This fundamentally aligns your incentives with the customer's wallet.
And dealing with complexity is key, because complexity is so often used to mask extraction.
If your business model requires the customer to be perfectly educated, to read every line of fine print just to avoid being nickeled and dimed, then your model is inherently disrespectful. You need to shrink complexity on purpose.
How do you do that?
A great tool is to publish transparency. Use a plain English fee card. 1 page. No footnote traps, no asterisk clauses. And if your leadership team is uncomfortable printing that single fee card and hanging it in the lobby, you have found your strategic leak.
That is powerful and very practical. If you must touch other people's money, leave fingerprints of care not cuts. Okay, that brings us to section 4. Price integrity. protecting loyalty using the Apple phone case. This is about what happens when you change the deal after the customer is already committed.
This takes us to Cupertino, California, September 2007. The original iPhone had launched just 10 weeks earlier at this landmark price of $599.
Right, and the early adopters, the loyal fans, the evangelists, they had stood in line, paid full freight, and effectively helped Apple prove the product's market viability.
And then Apple abruptly dropped the price of the 8GB iPhone by a substantial $200, down to $399.
The blowback was immediate, and it was severe. Early buyers felt played. They felt like they had paid an undeserved first-in-line tax.
Right. Their enthusiasm had been monetized and then punished. And the industry default up to that point would have been to just treat this anger as collateral damage.
Prices fall, early adopters take the hit. Too bad.
Exactly. But the volume of protests that hit Steve Jobs' inbox was just too loud to ignore. He later acknowledged getting hundreds of emails from upset customers.
And this is the hinge moment where loyalty could have been just irreparably damaged.
It could have been. On September 6, 2007, Steve Jobs published an open letter. He didn't backtrack on the price drop. He defended it as necessary to reach a wider audience. But he conceded the emotional math was real.
The emotional math.
I like that. People who trusted Apple felt punished for trusting early. And that feeling was just unacceptable for a company built on a high-trust, high-margin model.
He chose to pay a respect debt rather than call his most loyal customers entitled.
Precisely. The action he announced was the remedy. Apple offered a $100 store credit to customers who bought the iPhone before the cut, and this was explicitly positioned as doing the right thing.
And he apologized.
He included a sincere apology for the disappointment, framing it as repairing the relationship, not just fixing a pricing error.
This defines the core principle of price integrity. It recognizes that customers are buying more than just a product. They're buying fairness. They're buying into a reliable relationship.
And when the price changes that sharply, that soon after launch, customers lose the sense that the relationship is balanced. They feel exploited, even if legally the company did nothing wrong.
So the respectful habit is to assess the true cost to your reputation and then spend money to repair that imbalance.
Exactly. And it's important to note the financial engineering here. It wasn't a full $200 cash refund.
That's a key distinction. Why did a $100 store credit work rather than the full $200 in cash?
The goal was restoration, not indemnity. The $100 credit was a tangible make-good that restored dignity and acknowledged that emotional cost without destroying Apple's margin for the quarter.
And it kept the money in the Apple ecosystem.
It did. It encouraged future purchases. The real goal was to prove that durable wealth cannot be built if the people funding it, your first and most loyal customers, feel like the punchline.
They chose to acknowledge the disappointment and take responsibility for the relationship above the short-term margin.
The default habit protects today's margin by saying, too bad, buyer beware. The respectful habit protects tomorrow's reputation by spending money now to solidify trust.
So let's institutionalize this. What are the tools for managing price changes without just sacrificing loyalty?
First, you establish a clear fairness window.
A fairness window.
You define a window, say 14, 30, or 60 days post-launch, where early buyers receive mandatory price protection. If the price drops within that window, they automatically get the difference refunded or credited.
That removes the risk of being an early fan. It preempts the anger.
Right. And you should use those make-good tiers, learning from the Apple Credit example.
You don't always need a full cash refund.
Exactly. Tangible remedies, a store credit, a free extended warranty, an accessory bundle can often restore dignity and goodwill more effectively than a complex cash refund process. And crucially, the apology itself has to be human. Jobs' letter worked because it acknowledged the relational failure, not just the transactional outcome.
And finally, a great strategic piece of advice from the source material is to pre-commit to this rule.
Decide the price change rule in advance of the launch. Write it down, share it internally, get it approved by finance and legal.
Why is that so important?
It removes the temptation to exploit loyal customers when you're under pressure. When the leadership team is just focused on hitting quarterly numbers or clearing inventory, you're bound by your own prior commitment to fairness, not by reactive fear.
When you change the price, don't change the respect. That principle transitions perfectly into our final section. The anti-toll model, resisting captive extraction. And this is illustrated by the Costco and Atlanta Falcons model.
This section looks at the moment of highest temptation in any business relationship, when the customer is captive, when they can't easily walk away. This is where businesses often apply the highest tax.
And we have to start with the simplest, most powerful declaration of anti-toll value, the Costco hot dog.
The famous hot dog and soda combo.
Yeah.
It has been $1.50 since 1985. It has survived massive inflation, 2 recessions, global supply chain crises.
And there's the legend, which sources confirm is true, that co-founder Jim Sinegal told the CEO regarding raising the price of the effing hot dog.
I will kill you.
Yeah.
It's highly dramatic language, but it captures the absolute discipline required to uphold this principle. The hot dog isn't just a snack, it's an emblem of value.
That's proof.
It's visible, visceral proof of their broader business model. Internal caps on markups, about 14% on outside brands, 15% on their Kirkland signature products. Costco made a strategic choice not to fund growth by quietly squeezing members who are already paying a fee just to walk in the door.
The $1.50 combo is a promise made edible. It's a loss leader that signals that everything else in that store is also highly disciplined in its pricing.
And if they raised the hot dog price, customers would start to question everything they bought there. It would instantly diminish the value of the entire membership.
They win through extreme trust and high volume, not through extraction and resentment.
And this model applies directly to other classic captive environments, like sports and entertainment. You look at the Atlanta Falcons' Mercedes-Benz Stadium in 2016.
Traditionally, NFL games have become these classic examples of the captive audience tax. Financial ambushes where fans get hit with high prices for parking, huge ticket fees, and simple things like water costing $8 or $10.
Arthur Blank, the owner of the Falcons, chose to step away from that industry norm. He unveiled fan-first pricing for the new stadium, explicitly framing the move as goodwill and loyalty building.
And the crucial details are striking. Prices dropped sharply. Hot dogs were $2, sodas were $2 with refills, domestic beers were $5. This was a direct, intentional reduction in that captive audience tax.
The financial trade-off was massive. Other NFL owners reportedly questioned the logic. Why would Blank leave money on the table that they had all grown accustomed to collecting?
And the hinge moment was his decision to choose a different scoreboard.
Exactly. He prioritized long-term loyalty, attendance rates, and overall fan satisfaction over maximizing profit on every single transaction inside that stadium.
So the key principle is the duty to be fair in captivity. The temptation in any captive environment, subscriptions that are hard to cancel, stadiums, airports, ecosystems like Amazon or Apple where you're already invested, is to charge more just because the customer is stuck.
That's disrespect exercised through leverage. The principle dictates that when customers can't easily walk away, the duty to be fair is dramatically higher.
And the Costco Falcons model proves that respecting the customer's money, even when you have them cornered, is itself a profit model.
It is. It forces you to become operationally excellent elsewhere in purchasing, logistics, membership value, instead of relying on that easy, resentful extraction.
So let's wrap up with the tools for resisting this captive audience tax.
You have to first identify every point of captive pricing. List every moment where customers feel stuck after the purchase, inside your gated ecosystem, mid-event when they need something basic. These are your danger zones, your temptation points.
Then you adopt the whole day cost metric.
Yes. Fans don't just judge the ticket price, they judge the total bill for the experience. You have to track and optimize the all-in cost. The Falcons realized that reducing the cost of beer and food made the $150 ticket feel like a much better value.
Which leads to more season ticket sales, higher attendance overall.
Right, and the simplicity of the pricing model itself is a crucial element of respect. Use simple, whole dollar pricing. Avoid hidden add-ons or complexity. The Mercedes-Benz Stadium's simple pricing was a core part of their value statement. No confusing cents, just clear, low prices.
And finally, institutionally, you should assign a member's lawyer in every key decision-making meeting.
A member's lawyer, I like that.
You appoint someone, regardless of their title, whose single job is to argue solely from the customer's wallet and perspective. Their challenge should always be, would this fee, this markup, or this price increase feel fair if I didn't work here and was forced to pay it?
And if the member's lawyer can't honestly defend the price, you cut it.
That is the ultimate test of respect. Don't monetize captivity or loyalty. This has been a fascinating deep dive. We've pulled 5 seemingly disparate strategies from finance, retail, entertainment, but they all circle back to this central theme of respect for the customer's dollar.
Let's review those 5 principles we've distilled for building durable wealth, using the case studies as our anchors. First, anchored by the FTX collapse, custody is not ownership.
Right. Build legal, operational, and cultural walls around customer money to prevent commingling.
Second, anchored by the Zappos model. Make money reversible. Respect means not trapping the customer. Treat easy refunds as reputation insurance, not a cost center.
Third, from the Bogle Vanguard strategy, lower the toll. The customer's result is the gross outcome minus your extraction. Your first job is to minimize that leakage.
Fourth, anchored by the Apple phone lesson. Maintain price integrity. When you change the deal, you have to pay a respect debt, a tangible make good to your loyal customers so they don't feel punished for their trust.
And finally, from the Costco and Falcons model, resist captive extraction. When you have leverage over your customer, your duty to be fair is dramatically higher. Choosing constraint is choosing long-term strength.
That is the powerful underlying thread connecting all of these successes and all of these failures. Constraint breeds creativity.
Say more about that.
When you intentionally constrain yourself from taking money the easy way through misuse of funds, high friction, unnecessary fees, or price gouging, you are forced to become truly operationally excellent elsewhere.
This disciplined restraint is what builds enduring trust.
Which is the ultimate compounding asset. It is the cheapest form of capital you can possibly acquire.
And this knowledge applies far beyond just running a massive company.
Absolutely. We've looked at these 5 systems built by others. Now, we want you, the listener, to consider the last time you made a significant decision about your own resources, personal or professional. Managing a household budget or a team's expense account. Was your strategy built on maximizing extraction for a short-term, immediate gain? Were you maximizing liquidity at the expense of keeping a clear line between what's yours and what belongs to others?
The deepest dive really starts when you apply these principles inward. And you ask yourself, is my personal wealth-building strategy or the strategy I apply to the resources I control, is it built on maximizing extraction? Or is it built on maximizing trust?
We hope these 5 principles give you a clear map for choosing the latter.